Right, we're
Kim.
going
Yeah,
live
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right,
So
silence,
mm.
silence, 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 silence. Here we go.
Have you gone that live? Have you done it live so anyone that's
No,
subscribing
no,
can
yeah,
see that you're live?
yes, we are,
Or
and
send me.
it's on
Go on.
YouTube, guys. Here we go. We're in live now, so I'll bring you in. Hi, buddies. Douglas Hamid DJ for another episode of the Mic Drop Club. And today is a very special session as we celebrate the life of George Floyd, who was an innocent bystander to an event. Not bystander, in fact, he was innocently and brutally assassinated, literally live on television via courtesy of the bystanders for something as minuscule as being suspected of passing on a fraudulent $20 bill. Can you imagine that? So for the last year, America literally has been protesting. This is something that has galvanized the whole community. Black, white, Asian have been protesting. It's really brought to the fore racial matters, and people have had enough. People had enough. So on this session of the Mic Drop Club, I just wanted to share a reaction to how I felt when I was watching the verdict, some of the court case proceedings, and share that with two very close friends of mine, Jonas Floyd, you know very well, as well as Everton from Heavy B TV. He's in the house as well. He's doing his thing, as you can hear the sinister laughter in the background. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. How you guys doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good?
Good as
Heavy
can
B,
be.
Jonas, are
Fantastic.
you okay?
Yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant, brilliant stuff, brilliant
First
stuff,
and
brilliant
nice.
stuff. Okay, yeah, I just had to adjust the rendering on your on your camera there.
Yeah.
So, as we know, as I said in the intro, it's been literally a year in the making since George Floyd his life was brutally taken away at the knee of he who shall not be mentioned, but his name is in the title. So I guess we've got no choice. Derek Chauvin, the police officer who knelt on his neck for 9 minutes plus, in full view of bystanders, observers there, and you had to be living on the moon to really not know what's happening in terms of
Mm.
when this happened. America had a different president. They had Donald Trump in power. The reaction that Donald Trump gave to protesters over the year, how the protesters were labeled over the last year, the dignity of their family to call for peace, to engage with the other community leaders, civil rights movement leaders, and really put in a compelling case for justice. And
Mm.
for me, the pursuit of justice, I like saying that word. The pursuit of justice is every sentient being's legal right. And
Mm.
you see it across generations, you see it across races, you see it across genders. When somebody has gone through an ordeal that they have deemed unjust, some life has been taken, abuse has taken place, family members pursue justice. And you can read family tales of that this pursuit lasting generations.
Mm.
Sometimes the pursuit of justice is a country going through the whole ordeal as a country, saying they want justice from, say, a previous occupying force. They want justice. These things transcend time, because it's an ongoing quest. It's a life's work for those people who are prepared and have the fortitude to fight for justice. And that fight for justice takes on different meanings. It requires different approaches. Not all of us can be marching. You need some people who can practice law. You need some people who can calm the young ones. You need other people who can be authoritative so that they can write the narrative of what's happened. Because all too often we find that history is normally written by the conquering force. the victims of any campaign, their story is set aside. It's just swept aside. So when we are pursuing justice of any nature, you find there are numerous roles that need to be filled. And all these roles are equally important. But some roles obviously puts you in the spotlight. So I'm going to go down, then I'm going to go up to Jonas. So FEB, how did you feel when you first found out about the verdict? And furthermore, where were you when you found out the verdict?
Oh, I was at home. The time it was quite late. But yeah, I was at home. What I thought was quite surreal is that with all the compelling evidence, I mean, if this was anything else, any crime had been caught with so many cameras on that incident, yeah, like here in the UK, if a NHS health worker had even abandoned one of their patients and that many cameras had caught that person doing that, it would practically be open and shut. You would lose your pin. It would be open and shut. And yet we were waiting with bated breath as to whether this person was going to be convicted of that crime. It was a crime. There was, even if you wanted to talk about practice and say to yourself, did this person, was following the guidelines of their work? There were some key things that came out of that court case where you said you were in that person's care. You were in that person's custody. So that person has a duty of care to that person. And yet, until the paramedics came, and as their truck came, you still didn't take your knee off of his neck or back. The paramedics had to tap you on your shoulder to tell you to take your knee off of his neck and back. This is after the person's pulse had, you felt no movement. And yet, before that verdict came, I still wasn't sure whether the right thing was going to happen. And that says a lot.
And that's brutal. And that is brutal. So there was an air of uncertainty in terms of the compelling evidence that was presented and the reality that this is a country where justice is it's not guaranteed to be served.
Outcome.
It's not a guarantee.
It's not a guaranteed outcome.
Okay. So Jonas,
and that's
over in Sweden.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that in itself is quite shocking because, again, you're asking the key question, how did you feel? In that instance, I was actually quite numb, if I'm going to be completely honest, because your emotions, if you are not completely in control of your emotions, and then that verdict doesn't go what would be considered, the right verdict. I'm not saying, sometimes when people say this is the right verdict, you can actually see that bias is creeping in. But in this particular instance, it could only have been the right verdict. There was no conjecture. There was no. But anyway, Jonas, I will.
Yeah. Let me bring to Jonas.
Yeah.
Over in Sweden, what sort of news coverage? I know you don't listen to the news, and that's something I need to really take on board as a mantra. Yeah, as a mantra, and so you always have this warm glow about yourself because the news that we get typically is always negative anyway. So, what did you hear regarding this case, and what sort of take-home messages do you think are out there?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I heard this case from friends and families. And of course, when they told me the incident and all that, it was like, I was surprised what police can do. I mean, like you said, first thing I got up in my head was like protect and serve. Is what I remember from like the old police movies. and then it was like 9 minutes on his neck. And I'm a wrestler, so I know what impact that makes. So it was like unbelievable for me to just hear that case. And I didn't follow it, but I mean, I noticed the verdict, and it's like I can't not say I was following the court, so you need to heads up on that one. But my first feeling was like amazing that a professional policeman can do something like that for like 9 minutes. It sounds crazy for me, like a person, but I mean, we strangle each other in wrestling, and either you tap 3 times after like a couple of seconds. And what I understood, he also said that I can't breathe. Uh, and that if we do that as well, because sometimes we don't have the time to to tap, we just scream, and then our opponent let us lose. So really, really scary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, as I reflect more about, because I watched the court case unfold, and just so that I could hear how the defense and the prosecution go about articulating their position, and it became very clear to me at a very early stage that the the prosecution, which is the state, because they were coming from a very humanistic position. They wanted you to know who George Floyd or Perry Floyd was. They wanted you to know who he was as a person. And too often, when we have cases that have have the dimension or the dynamic of race in it, you disassociate the humanity in the individual. But with George Floyd, you got to understand who he was. You had narratives from his family telling you who he was, how he grew up, his values, his principles, all of these things. So you went on the journey, not only watching this horrific scene play out over and over again from different angles. As you talk about Everton, everybody talking about angles, this angle, that angle, this body cam, that. But it's still the same person's dying in front of you. You know, so that can numb you in a sense. However, the narrative is the one that keeps tugging at you, that now you know this person, you've invested a lot of time in understanding who this person was. So that to me was one profound, and I salute the prosecution for going that route. Because the defense, as they were defending the police officer guilty of that, they kept talking about what he did, what he was suspected of doing, opposed to one, who he was, and what actually transpired that day. Okay, they wanted to paint a picture of somebody that George Floyd was not. So that's another one. And before I bring Everton back in, and this is what was really key for me, was being somebody of color, as they say, you know, which makes me laugh. You ask yourself, when you see somebody in that position, you ask yourself, that could have been me. I've been stopped many times. I've been stopped many, many times. I remember even as a young 21-year-old, I was driving cars that I shouldn't technically drive for my age, based upon my race. Yeah. If I was a Caucasian driving the same car, it would be fine. But I was driving these cars, big cars, at a very young age. And I remember once being stopped 3 times on the same stretch of road. And the law typically says if you're stopped once, they give you what's called a slip. It's called a producer. It's a slip. So once you have that, that means you've got to present yourself at a police station within 7 days with your driver's license, insurance papers, MOT, all that kind of stuff. And typically, so once you get stopped once, you shouldn't be stopped again because you've already been stopped. So I get stopped once. I get stopped again for 15, 20 minutes down the same long stretch of road. Different police officers. I said, look, I've just been stopped. I show them another one. I show them the slip to show I've been stopped, right? That doesn't stop them, right? I still go through the same process again, right? Have another producer. And then this is from Croydon to Brixton. So the stretch, Croydon to Brixton, London Road, you're probably talking about 12 miles. A 12-mile stretch of road. You're talking about being stopped 3 times. Yeah. So watching that, knowing that you've been apprehended by police, and this is just one of many occasions, you cannot help just think to yourself, that could have been me, and what would I have said? What could I have done in that situation? And if I had witnesses, what sort of witnesses would I wish to have? For instance, the defense were making a big deal about the police were terrified of the witnesses, the 6 bystanders that were there. They were unsure. Anything, unruly crowd, anything could pop off. Right. So back to me as I'm watching this unfold, replaying this thing from different angles as everybody's watching and observing. And you ask yourself, if that was you and you had one wish and you got somebody pressing on your neck and you could wish for something, I would want for some witnesses to be there. Yeah? Outside of get this person off me, I'll say, do you know what? Somebody has to be out there recording this stuff because I'll need justice. That'll be in your back of your mind. Somebody has to see what these people are doing to help me. Right. So what type of people would you wish for?
I'd say the same. Like,
if you describe a band of people to witness a situation, what would you wish for? Describe them.
They don't have a look. They would just be people of conscience. I would want people who would be mortified by what they're seeing to see it, so that they can bear witness not only to it but testify in the way that these people were brave enough to do. One of the toughest things about being a witness at that particular moment is the helplessness, because that police officer didn't just damage George Floyd's family. He damaged them, the people who witnessed it, the people who may be questioning themselves to say, if I had stopped it, would I have got arrested? You're in this catch-22 situation where if George Floyd didn't die, then this wouldn't even have been hightalked. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, if you can let's go back to the witnesses. What type of witness? So you talked about conscientious witnesses. That's fine, right? Jonas, in terms of witnesses, what sort of witnesses would you, understanding now what the defense are like? Yeah? What sort of witnesses would you want? You're in a situation where you've been apprehended by the police, something's happening, and you can have witnesses to see what's happening. What sort of witnesses would you want?
Yeah. First comes up in my mind is like a martial art judge who is stopping the match.
Yeah,
I mean,
someone of power.
It's like one of first of my thoughts is like the witnesses should be a person who is really knowledgeable about what damage that policeman doing to a human. I mean, it's not so, but I think it's like Everton said as well, like consciousness, awareness, witness. But in my case, I would say I choose a martial art judge who is stopping the game.
Okay, good. No, that's good. Do you know what? It's a very good exercise. It's very good, and both responses I 100% agree with. 100% agree with. And this takes me to this situation. Isn't just by stroke of chance. Yeah, one of the witnesses, Jonas, was trained in martial arts. One of the witnesses was trained in martial arts. Yeah, he was just he just happened to be there to go and get something for his daughter. But he's trained. Even his T-shirt had the martial artist's like logo, so he understands the holds and everything else. Just to show how this situation is not normal. Everton talked about somebody with a consciousness. Yeah. Yeah. A 9-year-old child is the most consciously pure person you can find. She was there. Yeah. If you're talking about somebody who is not biased based upon their race, there were white people there.
Absolutely.
You see what I mean? If you're talking about people that understand the profession, there was a off-duty firefighter there. You know, if you're talking about somebody that has wisdom of age and experience, there was somebody there who's known in the community as literally the gatekeeper. He knows everything about the community. 61-year-old Mel was there. You know, so that he had guardian angels, I would say, to witness, because the way the defense went about their business, if he never had the breadth and depth of that band of unruly people recording, they would have said, for example, if it was an all black 21-year-old males, they'll say, oh, they were aggressive and they would have been police checked and all that. It was a gang.
It was a gang.
Exactly.
It was a gang.
So
that's what it would have, that's the picture that they were painting. If you never saw this the trial, you didn't see the witnesses, they didn't show you the video, but someone had described what their defense team was trying to portray. There was a gang of people. There was a crowd. It was, you know, I couldn't pay attention to him because there was a crowd of people. And the very fact that you believed that that was a good line of defense based on how many cameras, you are either extremely confident that it doesn't matter what evidence you have, we're going to get away with this. Because that's what was so shocking. And it almost reached a point where I just kept on saying to myself, I can't even fathom this not being a guilty verdict. But part of me could believe that he could have got away with that.
Yeah, exactly. Because the defense made a case. Yeah, the defense made a case of cross-examining those witnesses. You know, what does a 9-year-old know? You know, what does the off-duty firefighter know? What does the 61-year-old male know? What does somebody who's trained in martial arts know? You know, that's what they were. That is the narrative that they want to play out to the jury to try and convince them. But I'm just trying to say that if you could wish for a band of people to be there with you, that's what I said. It was a convergence of compelling reasons that ultimately led this decision to be dealt with in the way it was. Because there've been situations where people had camera footage, but the people who have taken the footage have ended up going to jail themselves. Yeah. You know, so this is something that is serious. The third and final point I want to raise, because I know time is short, is the judge had a very important role to play. Yeah. Very important role to play. Everybody, I treat you as my brother. Jonas, we treat each other as brothers, right? Different mothers, different backgrounds, but we're the same. Yeah? The judge, before the jury went in to deliberate their verdict, Everton spoke to me. What do you tell me?
I'd never heard the statement that judge read out ever. It so took me by surprise to the point where I was like, sorry, this should be said at every court case.
Well, what did they say?
It was hard to. That was probably the most emotional part for me.
Yeah, so let me fill in for you. What the judge was doing was preparing the jury before they go to deliberate to understand the role unconscious bias has when you're making these decisions. And he not only did he explain it in a way that was understandable to a layman, right? He also helped them process what to do with their unconscious bias. Yeah, because he was making the case that you need to judge what has happened based upon the merits of the case.
Absolutely.
Opposed to any preconceived, any unconscious bias views of people, whether you're coming from a right-wing approach or you're coming from a one that's more inclusive. Put all of those views, feelings to the side and judge this based upon what is true. They're going for the truth. And then the jury left, and within 12 hours they had reached their decision. And I believe, as Everton had goosebumps hearing it, and we spoke about it, that if the jury was left to their own, because this jury, Minnesota, is, although it's still a white dominated state, the jury was eclectic, was a mixed jury, 12 jurors. And for a guilty conviction, they needed to have a unanimous. Every single one has to agree.
If just one person decides not to.
Exactly. So when the country itself, just as a country, is 50% leans one way, 50% leans the other way. There's some people who just make a decision based upon party lines. Simply as that. But the judge set the scene, he set the president into motion to say, look, you have to treat this accordingly. Pay attention to your unconscious bias. Okay? Yep. And when you feel that you are moving in that direction, you need to appraise it. Yeah. 12 hours, Jonas, they came back with a decision. Under 12 hours, they came back. And the reporters at the time were saying, "Oh, it might be a long haul. We expect a decision by late Thursday, Friday, even to next week."
Up to 7 days.
Yeah, up to 7 days. Under 24 hours, the judgment was served, and it was guilty, guilty, guilty. And the irony of this, Jonas, is in the UK, we had the government, after the killing of George Floyd and the protests, mass protests, Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff all around the world was going on, they decided to commission a race relations report. I think it's titled that, to see if the UK is institutionally racist. That's what they decided to do, which is fine. God bless them. They try to do something, right?
Yeah.
This report came out, I think, 3 weeks ago. The report, a year in the writing, a year in the making. They got all of these non-relevant people to put their name to it, right? To say to validate it, that this is it. We're going to finally have some recommendations so that we can live in a country that's more harmonious, and inclusive, that celebrates diversity of thought, age, and experience. That's what they wanted. The report comes out, and before it's even released, Jonas, it's getting slated by every group going. They said, no, this is wrong. And the argument was, but you haven't seen it yet. But look, they've already leaked enough for us to know that this doesn't make sense. Anyway, to cut a long story short, one of the recommendations from this report that came out before the verdict of George Floyd, that was triggered by George Floyd's death in the first place, in the right, and stop the teaching of unconscious bias. This is a report to encourage racial harmony, inclusivity. This is what the report is for. But one of the recommendations is stop training unconscious bias. Are you still there? Yeah, I think I've lost people here. So what, am I still on my own? What's happening here? You need to come back. I don't know what happened there. All you guys got bounced. You're mute. You've muted yourselves, guys. Unmute yourself.
I'm here.
You're still there? Okay, cool. I think Ev's on mute, but yeah, it's all good. So, are you aware of, in terms of martial arts, Jonas, unconscious bias, do you use that term in Sweden?
Yeah, we do. I needed to check out the word and meaning, but yeah, exactly what you were talking about is like that we have been talking about it before. I mean, about we need to reset many things of our childhood and grown and so on. So we need to reset, and I think of the story you told me about the jury came to a decision within 12 hours. It's like when you say to any person that don't believe on old facts and old thing, you need to rethink. And I think was a statement to like you need to reset a
Yeah.
lot of mindsets around the world. So yeah, totally.
Great stuff. Great stuff, F. I don't know if you're on mute. You can't hear. You see,
Uh,
he's on mute. He's on mute at the
yeah,
moment. He needs to unmute himself.
he will do it
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah, yeah. He'll
No,
get it
so
right.
I mean, it's really interesting to come to that through. But I mean, I heard about Floyd, but just right after that, I just heard about the Asians in the States as well was like hunted.
Yeah.
So it's really going on.
Yeah, it's really going on. It's like everybody is a target. Everyone feels
Mm.
like they're being victimized, and where we are being grouped as a people into one pot in the UK, as we call BAME, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic groups. But all of us have individual experiences within that abbreviation. But the only thing that remains constant is the white view. Everything else is always going through change. You could be Negro, Negroid, nigger, colored, BAME. We can have all of these different terms, but the one constant that we have is white. I think things need to be a lot simpler, and we need to start to view and treat people as individuals. I think that's what we need to do, because my experience as a black African male is different from Evie's experience. It's different from yours, Jonas. But as long as we're treated as individuals, then everything's okay. I don't want to be treated in a way that doesn't respect my own experiences and
Your
what.
differences.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's the problem, is that when, people have to learn to respect that difference. It's the differences that count. The lived experience is a whole different ball game in itself, because this is why they keep on saying you have to walk a mile in someone's shoes to kind of even get an understanding of where it is that they came from. And if you discount that, if you disregard that whole experience, you're also disregarding the person and everything about them. So that, when we talk about inclusiveness, and that's us bringing everyone in, but that doesn't mean that you then disregard who they were or what they are. They don't have to. You've got to stop confusing the whole inclusiveness with conformity, because those are like two different things. Yes, people do kind of conform with certain structures, but that doesn't mean that they come in and they get rid of everything that makes them who they are, just to fit into, what they say, a square peg and a
round hole.
is it a round hole?
Yeah, or vice
You're
versa, isn't
trying
it?
to, or vice versa. The thing is, when we see it vice versa, sort of the round peg going into a square hole, yes, a lot. This is what we end up doing. We try to fit into something that isn't directly shaped for us, and then we get chastised for not actually fitting that square completely. We can't. That's the difference. We're supposed to celebrate difference, not I'm only going to respect you if you are identical to me, if you
Absolutely.
are my mirror image. But like one of the things that I would always say is this: it's not for some people, it's not their fault. If your life experience may have shown you that life from your perspective looks like this. And then there's times when we have to show you that actually that view is too narrow because the world doesn't look like that. From your perspective, it might look like that, but it actually doesn't look like that. But you've also got to have the responsibility to be able to grow, because we can't make you grow. That is every individual on this planet. It is their own responsibility to grow, to broaden their horizon, because other people can't force you to think differently.
And I think that there is the tenet, or one of the founding blocks of unconscious bias, being able to appraise and, as Jonas said, reset. I think it is perfectly said. It's a resetting exercise. Too often we keep going, plodding along in life without ever reflecting back onto things that we've said or didn't say, experienced, didn't experience. It takes a lot of courage to do that. Sometimes people do get defensive when you ask them to reset, because they're so used to doing things a certain way, and that unknown, or they might say, for example, the example I used to get all the time when I used to teach unconscious bias was, okay, you're walking down a dark alley, and in the dark alley you see some people walking up to you, and you can't really tell what they are brandishing, but they're teenagers. That's all you know. But you're in a dark alley, and you decide to go the opposite direction, right? One way of looking at in unconscious biases, was that the right thing to do? Did you make a decision based upon the racial profile of the people in the dark alley? Did you make a decision based upon the darkness and your vulnerability, being in a dark place alone scenario? And then if the opportunity rose again, would you make the same decision? If the answer is yes on all counts, so be it. The fact that you've gone through the process of replaying and rethinking that
and
is
reevaluating
enough. It's not always
decision.
necessarily mean that you change your decision, because the bias ultimately comes from safety. There's a safety element to it. If I go to a gym and I see dumbbells that the plates look like they weigh like 100 kg each side, if I'm looking at that, I'm ready to make a decision based upon what I know about myself, that I can't lift that. I can't lift it, and I could walk away, and if I reflect back, and I might still say, okay, I should have even tried. I could have tried.
Yeah,
I could have tried it. I could have felt it, but this is what we're talking about: unconscious bias. And with George Floyd, I just want to say, we salute you, Mic Drop Club. As your daughter said, you're here to change the world. You did change the world, because we're having this conversation. It's an eclectic conversation. We want to celebrate humanity. We're all on planet Earth, the third rock from the sun. All human beings that ever lived have come from this planet, on this planet. There's nobody foreign on this planet. So we have to always remember that, and love each other, support each other, in the spirit of harmony. And this is certainly what his daughter and all those campaigning want at the end of the day. We might have different views, celebrate different views, and robustly be able to question someone else's view. Don't dismiss it, and let's move forward. Mic Drop Club, we out. FVB, Jonas, take care. Right, so I've ended the broadcast.